Hi, Carol. Thank you for joining us this morning or this evening, depending on your perspective. It's can't imagine that there's many of our delegates here who don't know who Park Run is. But maybe a good place to start would be for you to just give us a quick introduction into Park Run.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I should let everybody know that I'm beaming in from Sydney in Australia. But my accent, you'll know that this is a Yorkshire accent. Yeah, I hope some people do know what Parkland's all about. We are a community organisation and we're all about bringing people together in their communities to be active, so to get moving, to be social, to meet other people, and to get outdoors in the fresh air. So we have got how many events? 2,600 events currently, and we are all over the world in over 20 countries. And you can come along to parkrun. You can walk, you can run, you can come and watch if you want, to get involved. But importantly for here, obviously volunteer. So, it's a really big part of what we do each week. How many do we have? 46,000 people come along and help out. We've just ticked over our 1 millionth person ever volunteering. And for what do? I am the global volunteer lead. I help strategically support volunteering. We've got volunteer leads, some really excellent volunteer leads in the UK and in Australia who support our volunteers directly, and I kind of help them. And yeah, it's a great role, and love my work.
Obviously, people think of Park Run as running, walking, etc. How did the volunteering part of that evolve?
Yeah, so Paul, who is our founder, Paul Sinton Hewitt, he started parkrun back in 2004, and right from day one, volunteering was part of parkrun. In fact, he was our first volunteer. He was injured. He was a runner, and he was injured at the time, and he wanted to get all his friends together, and he thought, okay, if I do a run, and I help out, and then we can go for coffee afterwards and we can get together. So really, what you're trying to do is create a community and social interaction. So volunteering was always there. When Parkrun started, volunteers were there to help the events operate. And that has evolved over time as we've got more information and understanding of how volunteering impacts people. Now we understand a lot more about what volunteering positively impacts on people's health and well-being. And yeah, it's a much more strategic part of what we do.
As you'll know, Carol, I'm quite a keen park runner, somewhere in between running and walking, I think mine. And I do volunteer as often as I can. I should do more, really. It always seems really easy to volunteer, both in terms of on the day, but also the pre-event communication seems quite user-friendly. The processes are really, really simple. And from a volunteering point of view, it just feels very natural. But I imagine there's a lot of planning and a lot of work that's made that as well, for me, as slick and as simple and as user friendly as it is.
Yeah, our model is keep it simple. And that's really important in order to break down barriers for people to get involved. But I guess the key to kind of keeping it that way and keeping people involved and interested is do a lot of work to really listen to our community, and we really trying to improve on that over particularly the last few years. So we have conferences where we meet our volunteers. We have online calls, we have news groups, team on tour in the UK where the head office team go around and they meet volunteers. And this year we've started to trial a volunteer feedback pool so that we're able to hear the voices, the feedback from volunteers on the ground, those who are involved, and make sure that their experience is one that they enjoy, one that's really simple and easy to get involved with, and yeah, one that they continue to get to do ongoing.
Yeah, but it just feels the barriers to entry are really, really low to get involved in volunteering. The technology that underpins it, the apps on the phone, if you're doing the barcode scanning or the timekeeping, etc., all feel kind of user friendly, and people can dip in and out of volunteering as and when they want. How's that sort of evolved over time?
Yeah, so kind of mentioned how our thinking about volunteering has evolved, and that really came out of, first of all, anecdotally, we were hearing from volunteers saying that we really enjoy this, but it was research that had been carried out that really helped us understand kind of what the model is and how it's been beneficial and keeping it simple. So we did a health and wellbeing survey in 19. It was
Mm.
60,000 park runners, largest health and wellbeing survey I think ever done at that time, and that really gave us insight into kind of what keeps people involved and what they enjoy, and creating this model that reduces the barriers. Like, you don't have to commit to the volunteering each week. If you come along on the day and you want to get involved, we'll create a role for you to. And actually, we've really tried to, I think importantly, embed volunteering as part of parkrun. It isn't this kind of side thing that helps walkers and runners. It is part of parkrun. You are a park runner when you volunteer.
You mentioned it almost quite casually, but data seems to play a reasonably big part in your thinking. And as you know, I do lots of work with organisations around the sort of impact of volunteering, and actually charities in general often are quite low on their data, their information that they have available to them. It always feels to me that there's a fair bit of data crunching that goes into understanding what volunteers want.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I mentioned that we've got a volunteer feedback pool that we're trialing, that kind of continual listening and gathering qualitative feedback. We also, we do regular surveys. So we have a volunteer experience survey that's been running since 2019. And that's a huge source of information. We can really get a sense check on how volunteers are feeling, and kind of deep dive into some of those comments. We do a net promoter score, which really helps us gauge what the sentiment is at, and where we maybe need to put some more work in. And
Yeah, because you've got so many volunteers involved, and actually getting those feedback loops to work with such large numbers of people, both runners and volunteers, is quite tricky, isn't it?
yeah, that's true. I mean, we've got 46,000 volunteers. We can't speak to every one of them, of course, representative samples, but we've got a really smart data team who do some incredible work to really make
Mm.
sure that we're listening and we're adapting all the time. We don't always get it right. We're continuously learning, and the lots of great organizations here that hopefully we can learn from. I think that's something that we'd like to do more, is network and share knowledge, share those kind of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, nobody gets it right first time, and actually, one of the beauties I think of what you do is it's agile. It keeps adapting. It's hearing things, it's trying things, learning, and then adapting as a result of that. And I think that's an example of a very mature, sensible organisation. One of the other things I always like about park runs is the kind of reward part. Everybody loves a t-shirt, don't they? With 2,500, whatever it is on there. How did the sort of reward and recognition part of parkrun come together?
I think we realised that varies from person to person, and we try to embed as many different ways to acknowledge volunteers, and it goes right from being there if you're there on event day to this thanks. Like, when we do our surveys and we ask volunteers, how do you feel acknowledged and appreciated? Overwhelmingly, it's a word of thanks. And it sounds really simple, but it's so powerful. And that's almost like a mantra at Parkrun now, to thank the volunteers and have a clap at the start. You said the milestones, so when you've
Mm-hmm.
got to certain, and that will motivate some people as well. So it's kind of finding what it is, and for others it'll be, if you're an ambassador, coming to the conferences, coming to calls.
And there's a kind of gamification there, which is great. It taps into a certain level of psychology. But there's also, at least my sense of the park runs I go to, and I do some tourism as well, is there's more often than not, there's a sense of kind of community around park runs. If the volunteering team often, although they're coming together perhaps randomly, feel like a bit of a they feel like a team, they feel like a bit of a community. But the whole event feels like a community. And then on the next level up, there's something about being a park runner. I think it's probably quite difficult to define, but it means something to a lot of people to be part of that wider global community. Did you sort of discuss those things in Parkrun HQ?
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about the tourism, and that all feels kind of community when you get, and that's back to what I said earlier about keeping it simple. Really, like when you go to an event, whether you come here to one in the UK, you go to Australia, you go to the US, the nuts and bolts of it are the same. It's it's got that localized, the people there and that local community, but keeping it really simple means that people find it really easy to get involved. They feel really easy to feel part of that community. And then the other thing I just add to that again is that thank you. That is part
Mm.
of parkrun, right? Every event team give a clap and a round of applause to the volunteers, acknowledge the volunteers, give a high five to the marshals. That is part of parkrun. And yeah, look, in terms of that broader, I feel like part of a bigger movement. There's a lot of stuff we do with that. We're really passionate that we let people know about our vision, healthier and happier planet. That's really important for us, and we let people know that this is the impact of coming to parkrun. I think people love being part of it. It's a really positive thing to do, and yeah, there's just so many benefits from being involved, and yeah, people are proud to be involved, which is really good. It's really lovely to
Yeah.
see.
And I wonder even whether, with you guys in the centre, whether it actually, because some of this stuff has become so part of your DNA that you forget how extraordinary some of it is. The tourism, for example, there's not many volunteering organisations that I can think of where you can just move to different parts of the country at whim, maybe even different countries, and participate. But, you've developed something in your DNA and in your process where, if I go on holiday somewhere, I'm disappointed. I went to San Francisco this year, and they've closed the San Francisco Park run. Carol, I was very disappointed in you, but I look for that when I go away, and I'm sure others are the same.
Yeah, and we want to protect that as well. There's also some things that are fundamental and we know work, and we're going to protect that. And that simplicity in the model, I think, is really important.
Yeah, sure. And on that very last final note, if you was to say to those listening today, there's one thing that you'd like to share from Part One that everybody should consider learning from in their own volunteering, what would you say that is?
I think for me, particularly in this role, I think there's one thing that has kind of really helped the support of volunteer community is quite simply to listen to your volunteer community. That it's absolutely fundamental that we do that. It's not us and them head office, and we're part of this community, and we listen and show you're listening as well. Demonstrate that you said this, we did this. That kind of communication is really important.
Oh well, I'm sure everyone will get an awful lot from not just that, but everything else that you said this morning. So thank you ever so much for joining us, Carol. It's really valuable to hear a little bit about the parkrun experience.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for listening.